I was mincing garlic when the message came through. The kitchen smelled of rosemary and butter, and the chicken was roasting in the oven, Ethan's favorite. I'd lit the good candles too, the ones we got from that farmer's market last fall. I remember thinking he might finally notice the effort. He'd said he was flying back from Phoenix that night. Meetings had run late all week. I hadn't seen him in 5 days, and part of me missed him. The part that still believed we were salvageable. When my phone buzzed, I wiped my hands on a dish towel and glanced at the screen. No name, just a number I knew too well. Pack your things. I'm coming back with someone else. You're no longer needed. That was it. No punctuation, no explanation, no anger. Just execution. I didn't drop the phone. I didn't scream. My body didn't even flinch. It was like all the noise in the world had been sucked out of the room. The timer beeped on the oven. I didn't move. Outside, the porch light from across the street flickered like always. Inside, everything stilled. My breath, my pulse, the part of me that still thought love meant safety. I read the message again, slower this time, as if pain might become clarity. But it didn't change. He had typed it, sent it, meant it. I set the phone down gently on the counter beside the salt, turned off the oven, uncorked the wine I was saving. Not out of celebration or despair, just because I needed something warm going down. There were no tears, just a quiet rearranging inside me. Something shifting, something tightening. I walked to the living room window and stared out at the dark. He was probably boarding his flight, laughing. Maybe she was sitting beside him. Maybe she didn't even know my name. I didn't know what tomorrow would look like, but I knew this much: he wouldn't get the version of me he was expecting. The message ended our marriage, but it started something else entirely. I didn't respond. Not then, not later. The phone sat silent on the counter, untouched. I turned every light off in the house one by one, as if I was closing a museum exhibit. A gallery of quiet betrayals. The hallway photos, anniversaries, forced smiles, a birthday he almost missed, looked back at me like artifacts of a woman I used to be. The bedroom smelled like his cologne, that expensive one he only wore when he traveled. I stood in the doorway, arms crossed, letting memory try to rise in me, but it didn't. Nothing came, no collapse, just air, cold and dry. I sat on the edge of the bed and pulled the leather-bound notebook from the nightstand. Not a journal, a ledger. Something I hadn't touched in years. The pen moved before the tears ever could. Joint bank accounts, retirement fund. That second credit card, I didn't apply for airline miles. His logins, the ones he never changed. The name Tessa he once mumbled in his sleep. I wrote like I was drafting a war plan. But I didn't feel angry. I felt clear. I walked downstairs, turned off the kitchen light, and picked up my phone. Scrolled through the contacts until I found her. Maya Benton, old college friend, family law attorney, the one who held my hand at my mother's funeral and said, "Call me if you ever need to burn the blueprint and build again." I hit call. She answered on the second ring. "Claire." I didn't explain. "Don't ask questions. Just meet me tomorrow." She paused, then named the time. I hung up and stared at my reflection in the dark window. I didn't look broken. I looked awake. Ethan had once told me if we ever split, you'd fall apart. He wasn't wrong about the split, but he'd miscalculated everything else. He expected rage. I gave him silence and precision. The next morning arrived without drama. Just silence, soft and absolute. I drank my coffee black and cold, standing at the sink as the sun pushed weakly through the kitchen blinds. I didn't open my messages. I didn't check the news. I had somewhere to be. And the only thing I carried with me was a notebook. And the version of myself he forgot existed. Maya's law office hadn't changed. Same firm, same burgundy carpet, same faint scent of lemon polish and certainty. She looked up as I walked in, eyebrows raised, but she didn't say I'm sorry. That's what I liked about Maya. She respected survival over sentiment. "Claire Whitmore," she said, standing. That's a face I haven't seen since Let's Skip Memory Lane. I cut in gently. I need a plan. We got to work. The joint checking account frozen. She printed confirmation before I'd even sat down. The brokerage accounts traced and flagged. Her paralegal walked in with files I didn't even remember existed, retirement accounts, old 401ks. One by one, we locked down everything with my name, even loosely tied to it. By the time we reached the mortgage deed, Maya looked up. Still in both names. But if we file a preemptive restraining clause, he can't sell or refinance without your signature. I'll draft it now. Outside, the locksmith was waiting. I didn't even flinch when he asked just front and back or the garage too. Everything I said, even the attic door, he nodded. Each click of metal hitting metal felt like punctuation on a sentence I was finally finishing. Maya handed me a fresh set of keys. You sure you're ready for this? I looked down at them in my palm, simple silver solid. No, I admitted. But he thinks I'm not. As I drove back through our neighborhood, I passed the bakery where Ethan forgot to pick up my birthday cake 3 years ago. I told everyone I wasn't in the mood for cake that year. The lie tasted like frosting and resentment. At a red light, his voice echoed in my memory. Claire, you'd fall apart without me, and maybe once I almost did. But today the weight in my chest had been replaced with steel. He thought I'd fall, but I've never stood straighter. I didn't need the proof to believe it. But I needed it to finish this clean. There's something about betrayal that becomes sharper when it's printed in black and white. No more what-ifs. No more room for benefit of the doubt. I wasn't looking for closure. I was building a case. Maya gave me the name of a private investigator she trusted. Former Army intel, she said. Discreet, thorough, expensive. Worth every penny. I met him at a diner just off I-25. His name was Conrad. Mid-50s, calm eyes, plain coffee. I'll need a timeline, recent photo, anything he might have used, cards, flights, names, he said without judgment. I slid a folder across the booth. Inside were the last 6 months of Ethan's life, as far as I could track. He thinks he's clever, I said. But he's just consistent. Conrad didn't smile, just nodded once. Give me a few days. 3 days later, he called. No drama. Just, it's all in the envelope. Photos, receipts, timestamps, room service for 2 at a boutique hotel in San Diego. Charges to our joint card, flights paid with points from my account. There was a woman, brunette, mid-30s, expensive shoes, that particular gloss of someone who thinks other people clean up her messes. Her name, Tessa Morgan. He'd saved her in his phone under Tom Logistics. Classy. I didn't cry. I didn't even blink. Instead, I walked back into the house and pulled out a storage bin. I wasn't packing to leave. I was preparing to remove what belonged to me. Strategically, surgically. I labeled folders, scanned documents, retrieved passwords I hadn't used in years. The wedding ring dropped into a tin marked evidence. He could keep the couch. I'd already memorized where he'd lost himself. No dramatics, no goodbye letters. Just an orderly unraveling of what he thought was permanent. And as I moved from room to room clearing, what mattered, one thing repeated in my mind like a quiet anthem. While they played pretend in a hotel, I reclaimed the real home mine. The house didn't echo, not yet, but it had that strange quiet you feel in hotel rooms and hospital hallways, places that are temporarily yours, but never really home. Every drawer was empty. The closets cleared, the photos taken down. I left nothing sentimental behind. If it wasn't useful or legal, it was gone. I didn't take everything, just everything that mattered. I moved methodically like a ghost retracing her own life. One last pass through each room. One last sweep for anything that belonged to me and only me. The last call I made was to the utility company. Cancel everything effective tomorrow, I said. Do you want to transfer service? The woman on the line asked. No, let him figure it out, I replied, with the kind of calm that comes after a storm has already done its damage. The thermostat I lowered to 58, just enough to keep the walls from cracking, just cold enough to make a point. Then I placed the only thing I hadn't packed, a white box square and clean tied with a green satin ribbon. It sat in the center of the dining table. The table where we'd once hosted Thanksgiving. Where he'd once forgotten my birthday dinner. Where I'd once waited through silence thinking love meant patience. Inside the box were 3 things. First, a stack of photos. The real kind. Us dancing in the living room. Him holding my hand outside the ER. A candlelit dinner from the year he actually remembered. Moments too genuine for frames, too painful to keep, too honest to throw away. Second, printed bank records. Every lie tracked in ink. Everywhere tight this month, disproven by charges he never thought I'd question. Hilton suites, luxury dinners, purchases I'd never seen. Third, a handwritten note. Simple, unemotional, final. You're right, I'm no longer needed. Neither is your access. No threats, no accusations, just truth, boxed and bowed. I tied the ribbon again once tightly, walked to the front door, looked back not out of regret but certainty. He had left me with silence. I returned it but sharper. The SUV rolled into the driveway just after midnight, its headlights cutting across the front yard like a searchlight. The house stood dark, no porch light, no glow from the windows, no sign of life inside. Ethan slowed the car to a stop, frowning as he tapped his phone screen. The garage door didn't open. That's weird, he muttered. Tessa yawned in the passenger seat, reaching for her handbag. We stopping here? I thought this was just for a night. She looked up at the house, unimpressed. It looks dead. Ethan didn't answer. He stepped out and tried the garage button again. Nothing. He walked to the front door, pulled out his old key, and slid it into the lock. It jammed halfway. He yanked it out and tried again. Still nothing. He jiggled it, twisted harder. Tessa dragged her suitcase over, annoyance creeping in. Are you sure this is your place? Yes, he snapped. Something's just off. He walked around to the side gate where the spare key used to be hidden beneath the garden statue. Gone. The planter it was under gone too. He glanced around, unease building fast. From the side window he caught a glimpse of the dining room. Empty walls, no pictures, no clutter, no shoes by the stairs. And right in the middle of the table, like an offering or a warning, was a single white box tied with green ribbon. What the hell, he muttered. The back door was locked. The garage keypad didn't respond. The code hadn't changed, but the power clearly had. Tessa stood by the car, now visibly irritated. Ethan, I'm cold and tired. Can we go to a hotel? He didn't answer. He found a window slightly cracked and forced it open, scraping his wrist in the process. He slipped inside and walked straight to the table. The house was silent, too silent. No hum of the fridge, no distant tick from the thermostat. He felt the cold in his bones now. He opened the box with shaking fingers. The photos hit first: burnt pancakes, hospital nights, birthday smiles he barely remembered. Then the bank records. Then the note. You're right, I'm no longer needed. Neither is your access. He stood frozen, throat dry. Tessa stepped inside, looked around puzzled. Where's the furniture? There was no answer. Just cold air and the echo of his own footsteps. He threw me out with a text. Now he couldn't get back in with or without her. The envelope arrived 2 days later, thick, formal, stamped in bold, legal notice, divorce proceedings enclosed. Ethan ripped it open at the kitchen counter of his temporary rental. The air conditioner rattled above him, the only sound in the room. Inside were more pages than he expected. Divorce filings, asset freezes, formal declarations, and a list of everything Claire was legally entitled to, plus a few things he'd forgotten she knew about. He flipped through the paperwork with growing disbelief. The accounts were already frozen, the joint credit cards suspended, even the brokerage funds locked down before he could move a dollar. He picked up his phone, thumb trembling, called once, voicemail, again, Still voicemail. Claire, we need to talk. You're being dramatic. This isn't how adults handle things. No response. Another day, another call. I'm willing to talk about fairness. We built this together. Still nothing. Claire wasn't hiding, she was finished. By the end of the week, Tessa was gone too. She left a note that simply read, I didn't sign up for this mess. Good luck. Ethan's ego bruised into confusion. He wasn't used to silence being the final word, so he did the one thing that made him feel in control. He showed up to the house. It was open for showings now, staged immaculate neutral. The warmth was gone, the scent of Claire's rosemary and lemon vanished, replaced with realtor-issue vanilla candles and plastic orchids. He walked in like he still belonged. Claire was already there, standing with the realtor, arms folded, face calm. You can't just, he started. She cut him off with a single sheet of paper, stamped, signed, notarized. Fairness, she said, voice quiet but surgical. You left that with your dignity. He looked at the paper. She watched him read it. Not to hurt him, just to make sure he saw the part where her name was the only one on the title now. The realtor said, would you like to schedule a walkthrough? Sir Claire didn't even blink. Ethan stood there, paper in hand, trying to form a sentence. He tried to rewrite our ending. I rewrote the contract. The house in Boulder wasn't big. 2 bedrooms, a small sunroom, hardwood floors that creaked just enough to feel lived in. But it was hers, clean paid for, and wrapped in silence she had chosen. She unpacked slowly, box by box. No rush, no deadlines. Just deliberate placement, like reclaiming a rhythm she'd forgotten she could set. The first thing she did was plant rosemary and lavender in small clay pots on the kitchen windowsill. They took to the sun quickly. So did she. Claire launched her consulting service 3 weeks after the move. No grand opening, just a small sign, a quiet website, and a mission: financial clarity for women starting over. The first client came through Maya's referral. Then another. Then 5 more. They sat at her dining table, nervous, tired, embarrassed. Claire poured them tea and said, I've been there. Now let's get you somewhere else. They believed her not just because she was good with numbers, but because she knew the look of a woman rebuilding. Word began to spread, not fast but solid. Widows, divorcees, women who had been called too emotional to handle money, now left her office with spreadsheets and strategy. Some hugged her, some cried. One woman whispered, I thought starting over was for younger people. Claire had smiled. Starting over is for the living. Every Thursday, Maya came over. They drank wine on the back patio sometimes, in silence, sometimes not. They talked about clients' childhood ridiculous exes, and the way peace can feel foreign at first. Claire bought a used bike, joined a book club, learned to make lentil soup from scratch. She filled the fridge with food she actually liked. And when she opened her closet, nothing was there by accident. Sometimes she'd glance at the envelope from the sale of the old house still filed in her drawer. Not to revisit it, but to remind herself that chapter ended because she turned the page. She didn't just survive Ethan. She outgrew the version of herself that needed him. He left me empty. I filled the space with something better. The text came late one night, months after she'd stopped thinking about him at all. Tessa's gone. I miss what we had. Can we meet just to talk? Claire stared at the screen. Not with anger, not with longing, just curiosity. The same way you might look at a bruise that's finally faded and wonder how it ever hurt so badly. She didn't answer right away. She sat with it. Let it sit with her. Then the next morning she replied with a time and a place, not for closure, for clarity. They met at a cafe downtown, one she knew he'd never noticed when they were married. Local, unpolished, quiet. She arrived 10 minutes early and chose the corner booth by the window. When he walked in, she recognized his jacket before his face. He looked smaller, not thinner, just deflated. As if life had pressed in on him and he hadn't learned how to push back. "Claire," he said, offering a half smile. "You look good," she nodded but didn't compliment him back. He launched into it. Tessa had left. Things hadn't turned out the way he'd expected. He missed the dinners, the routines, the quiet steadiness. "You always knew how to keep things together," he said. "I didn't realize how much I leaned on that." Claire stirred her tea and waited. "I just thought, maybe there's still something there," he finished, reaching for a softness in her that no longer lived there. She looked at him for a long moment, the man who had discarded her with a sentence now fumbling for one that might bring her back. She smiled. Not cruelly, just clearly. "No," she said gently, "but thank you for reminding me what I never needed." His face twitched, hurt, confused, maybe even ashamed. She stood, left cash on the table, and walked into the cold air outside. "He thought I'd miss him. I almost did until I saw his face." The second office opened on a Thursday. No ribbon cutting, no press release. Just a new brass plate screwed into the door that read, "Claire Whitmore, Financial, North Office." It sat on the corner of a quiet block near the university. A little more sunlight, a little more foot traffic. She'd chosen it because it felt alive, like possibility had taken root in the walls. The space wasn't large. 2 desks, a waiting chair, and a corkboard full of handwritten thank you notes from women she'd helped. Most were first names only out of privacy or maybe pride. Some were tear-stained, some were fierce. That afternoon, a client named Vanessa stopped by with her final paperwork. Mid-30s, nervous hands. A month ago, she had arrived unsure and trembling. Today, she handed Claire a notarized lease in her own name. "You gave me courage," Vanessa said, eyes shining. "I didn't think I could do any of this without him." Claire smiled. "You didn't do it without him. You did it in spite of him." They hugged. Claire watched her walk out into the late afternoon light, her stride stronger than when she first walked in. That night, Claire stayed late, reviewing forms, organizing files, watering the tiny rosemary plant in the window. She shut the office down herself, flipping lights one by one, locking the door keys clinking in her palm like punctuation. She stepped outside into the chill, looked back at the door, and saw her name reflect back in the glass. No more shared bank accounts, no more missed birthdays, no more rooms filled with apologies she never received. This life, this business, this freedom had been built without anyone's permission. He erased me with a message. I rebuilt with documents, silence, and my name on every door. "You're no longer needed," he said. "Now I'm not just needed. I'm chosen by me." Ever been told you're no longer needed? If this story made you feel something, leave a comment. Subscribe for more stories about women who didn't just survive, they rebuilt. And if you believe silence can be power, don't forget to like this video.